Hello and welcome to Tax Freedom Day, well, at least here in the United States. So what is that exactly? We will explain, of course. Tax Freedom Day is the day when citizens have earned enough to pay its tax bill for the year. That worker can now stop working in theory for the tax man and start working for him or herself. It's a big bill. $3 trillion in the U.S. alone in federal taxes, another $1.5 trillion in state taxes. Altogether, that comes out to 30% of its total earnings. This year's Tax Freedom Day comes 3 days later than last year. Well, you guessed it, because there's more taxes. It took U.S. workers 3 extra days this year to earn enough to pay the bills. Now, how does that compare to other countries around the world? For that, we turn to Europe, where they don't call it Tax Freedom Day. It's called Tax Liberation Day. According to the latest data from last year, Ireland came in closest to the U.S. The Irish celebrated their Tax Liberation Day on April 24th, so relatively close. The United Kingdom celebrates its Financial Freedom Day a little later in May. Same goes for Bulgaria and Luxembourg. In June, you've got Spain and Greece. Yes, they pay more taxes, and taxes are a major issue there, as austerity measures have been hurting the average taxpayer. Some major economic powerhouses, though, pay even more. Their tax day is not till July. Those include Italy, Germany, and France. And following all the way back in August is Belgium. Yes, the workers in Belgium on average have to work well into August before the taxman technically gets all his taxes. Kyle Pomerleau is the economist at the Tax Foundation Center for Federal Tax Policy. He helps crunch the numbers to determine the date for the U.S. Tax Freedom Day. He says it's a good way to look at how much U.S. workers spend on taxes.
Yeah, so Tax Freedom Day is important because it gives taxpayers sort of a way to understand the total cost of government. This year, Americans will be paying $3 trillion to the federal government, an additional $1.5 trillion to state and local governments. And Tax Freedom Day is a vivid calendar-based representation of that. We're getting lots of benefits from the government, but is it worth this cost?
What's the average tax rate for the U.S.?
Not entirely sure, but if you looked at the total tax rate as a percent of national income this year, it is 30%.
Okay, so roughly 30%. And I bring that up because I want to compare the U.S. tax rate to other ones around the world, whether it's China, which is even higher, or in Europe, it's actually higher. And to be fair, you get more for paying more taxes, depending on which country you're in. So let me just take France, for example. Their Tax Freedom Day is sometime at the end of July. But one would argue that they get better health care, they may have better higher education, they may even have better roads, because we have a lot of potholes here that don't get fixed. Is this a fair comparison?
Well, it's a good way to sort of gauge how the costs and benefits of government. So like I said, Tax Freedom Day is out there for the taxpayer to decide. If we're not getting enough benefits and they feel that this is worth the price of more taxes for more benefits, we want them to be able to decide that.
When you look at Europe, a lot of people would argue that because of the higher tax rate, a lot of the people leave the country or move jobs away from those countries. And this makes sense if you live sort of in a silo. If you don't do A, you go to B. It's a zero-sum game. But I expect a lot of experts, including yourself, probably don't look at it as a zero-sum game, because even though one country may have a very high tax rate, it doesn't mean all that money just leaves. Am I right?
Yeah, so there are costs and benefits. So higher taxes mean more government benefits, but also higher taxes mean slower economic growth. There have been a lot of studies that show that higher tax burdens, especially on savings and investment, the corporate income tax, capital gains, dividends taxes, these seem to hinder economic growth. So it's a trade-off there as well. So are we willing to pay for these higher benefits with slower economic growth in the future?
There are many places in Asia that have a flat tax. Singapore, Hong Kong, just to name a few, they have a flat tax rate, and some would argue that would work a lot better, especially in places where you have a very complicated code and you have millions of accountants and lawyers working on reducing people's taxes. Does that make sense to simplify the American tax code?
Yeah, currently the U.S. tax code is very complicated. It takes billions of hours for all people in the country to prepare and just pay their taxes. So that's billions of hours that are spent just to write the check. If we were to simplify the code, we would have a lot of gains right there.
Okay, so I think many people would agree with you. What's stopping that code from being changed?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why it's difficult right now. Congress is in the middle of debating currently what to do with our tax system, and one of the big issues is who pays what. Are certain groups of people paying enough? Are certain people paying too little? And that's one of the issues right now in tax reform and being able to simplify the code.
Which country in the world, in your opinion, has the best tax system where citizens they get their money's worth and they're happy to pay their taxes, and on tax day, they're all smiles?
I'm not entirely sure, but I'm hoping that that taxpayers realize what the cost of these benefits are throughout the country. And for America, at least, Tax Freedom Day is a good way for them to realize what the costs and benefits of the U.S. tax system is.
Okay, you're an economist, so you crunch these numbers, and here in the United States, if you were to change one thing about the U.S. tax code that you think would be good for the economy and would make sense, what would that be?
It would be to lower the top tax rate on corporate income. Currently, the United States has the highest corporate income tax rate of all the industrialized nations at 39.1%. Our neighbors, or our trading partners, they have an average rate of 25%. The result of this is that investment is moving overseas, and the economy here is slowing down. If we were to lower that rate, the economy would be boosted, investment would come back to this country, we would see more jobs.